Welcome back to some pre-calculus videos. This will be the exciting conclusion to section 5.5, the law of sines. So we're going to talk about the ambiguous case of SSA today, and I do want to just remind you that we write this situation as SSA, not the other way around. It's just something that math people do. We like it that way. But in this case, we're going to say triangle ABC has side A of 7, side B of 6, and then angle A is 30. And so drawing the picture can sometimes be a little tricky for some of these cases. It really doesn't matter if your picture is realistic. You can just draw any triangle ABC, put in the side lengths. It can look like an equilateral triangle. The important thing is that once you've drawn it, you kind of realize what situation it is. And so going back to our previous video, I would say that as we go around the triangle, this is a big S, and then a little s, and then the angle. And so the way that I would write that would be, let me get a different color here, we'd say big S, little s, A, and whenever you have this situation, you're guaranteed to have one triangle. Okay, it's just, you can assume that. So in this case, I know there's going to be one triangle. It doesn't matter if my picture is super realistic or not. I know I'm going to be looking for one triangle. And so as I set up my work for this question, the thing that I can solve for first would be angle B, because I know angle A and the opposite side. I know this side, and what's opposite it is angle B. And so law of sines, that's the first thing I could set up. So I would say that sine of 30 over 7 is going to equal sine of B over 6. Okay, and if I go through and I do my cross multiply and divide and then take the inverse sine of that answer, so we've gone through that a little bit yesterday, I would get angle B, I'm sorry, not yesterday, I guess earlier today, you would get 25.38 as this angle measure. Squeeze it in there. Okay, so 25.38 for angle B. From there, I know that all the angles have to add up to 180, so I know that angle A is 30, I know what angle B is. I kind of work backwards from there, and I can figure out what angle C is, and that would be 124.62. And if I know what angle C is, now I can set up law of sines again to solve for side C. So we'd say sine of 30 over 7 equals sine of 124.62 over little c, right? We're looking for little c right there. And I go through, I cross multiply and divide, and I would come up with little c equals about 11.52. Okay, so that was really, really quick. That's kind of the answer I'm looking for right there. So I would just quickly on your own check that math work, make sure that it does make sense for you. But that's the general idea when you have a big S, little s, A situation. You know it's going to be one triangle. You figure out how you can set up law of sines, and you go from there. Now, they do call this the ambiguous case because something funny happens when it's little s, big S, A. And that's what the second example will show you. So the second example, we know the same parts. We know side A, side B, and angle A. And the first picture that I'm drawing here looks very similar to the first one, first example. But as I go through here and look at this, I notice that I have the little side first, then the big side, and then the angle that I know. And so for this one, when it is little s, big S, A, then I'm either going to have two triangles, or I could potentially have zero triangles. And so this one I have to be a little careful with. Now I've already kind of shown you that it looks like we're going to have two triangles because I have a smaller one drawn down there. And when we're back in class together, I will show you a nice visual aid that shows how you could end up with these two triangles, or even how you could end up with zero triangles. So you just have to be a little patient with that. But we set this up. We try to solve for something in that first triangle, and again, it looks like angle B is going to be the first thing that I could solve for. So I would say that sine of 30 over, in this case 6, should equal sine of angle B over 7. And again, I can do the cross multiplying and the dividing and come up with an answer. In this case, once I do that, I get B equals 35.69 degrees. Now, at this point, this is where you know if you're going to have 2 triangles or 0 triangles. If your calculator spits out an error answer for angle B, you're done. Right away you know there's going to be 0 triangles. But if you get an answer here, and you know that it's a little s, big SA situation, right away you know I'm going to have to find a second triangle at some point. And I'll show you how to do that in a little bit. But right now we know we're going to find 2 triangles because we got an answer right here. Okay, from there, just like we did in the previous example, I know 2 of the angles. It's got to add up to 180, so if I go through and do the work, I know angle C is going to be 114.31 degrees. And from there, I could figure out what little side C is going to be by saying sine of 30 over 6 equals sine of 114.31 over little c. And if I cross multiply and divide for that, I'm going to get C as 10.94. Which would make sense based on the picture that I'm seeing there. That should be the long side. Okay, so this is my answer for the first part here. But again, because I know the situation, I know that I got an answer initially, I know there's got to be another triangle that's out there. So how do we start setting up and finding that second triangle? Well, again, in class I'm going to have to show you why we can do this, but we need to take the first angle that we found, so in this case angle B, and we're going to go 180 minus that angle. There's a reason that we do that. Again, I'll have to show you that in class. So if I went, I'm just going to kind of split this up here a second. So I'm going to go 180 minus the 35.69. Okay, so that 35.69 is coming from right there. There's a reason we do that. It's not just magic. I can show you why when I'm back in class, but I would get 144.31. Okay, that's going to be what angle B is in our second triangle. And it kind of makes sense. It looks like it's a bigger angle in the picture. So I know right now that angle B in the second one is 144.31. I got that by subtracting the first angle B from 180. So you just have to remember that as you go through some homework later today. That's what you want to do. And then angle C would be 180 minus what angle B is minus what angle A is. In that case, I get a really small angle of 5.69 degrees. Okay, and now I can find little side C, which is right there, by setting up one more law of sines. So over here I could say sine of 30 over 6 equals sine of 5.69 over little c. I cross multiply and divide, and I would get c as 1.19, which again makes sense. It's got to be the small side based on the picture that I have there. So this is the answer that we have for the second triangle. This is by far the most complicated thing we'll look at in our little unit here on law of sines and law of cosines. You just have to know when you're going to potentially have this little s, big SA situation, and then once you set that up, know how you're going to find the 2 triangles if that's the situation. So do your best with this. Come with some questions to class tomorrow.